If I go to,
Just like that. Here we are. We're live.
we are live and direct. Let me get this up and running. Hold on. So you asked about the mic.
What's up?
You asked about the microphone. Is it a little too dark? Am I a little bit too dark? Look like
No.
I'm scheming an evil plan or something.
Especially like earlier when you would log in and you were like so locked in.
Uh,
What were you saying?
you asked about the mic. Like, how was I gonna do with the mic? But ready.
Oh yeah.
So, plan is to plan is to just record it normal, like it's not connected to anything. Yeah, it is. Um,
Yeah.
it's not connected to anything, but I'm going to like after the edit it or like take out the audio for that and put in the audio in. You know what I'm saying? Like a little clip.
Yeah, see, but that sounds like a very
It shouldn't be that.
difficult. I mean, maybe not very difficult. It sounds more difficult. And I don't know what the impact would be. Like, would it be, you think it would be positively impacting the audio?
hard. Yes. Well, yes, because yes.
Okay.
Wait,
I honestly, I don't even think it's possible. Well, I think it could be possible, but I think it's you're talking about it's capturing my voice too.
oh, I see what you're putting down. Yes. That's so yes. So it would be
It's
like
like it's very very difficult then. If it's not capturing my voice, it's very very difficult because then we have to just like cut in every time you speak, swap
yeah,
that in.
you're so right. You're so right. The good thing is that it is capturing your voice. So
Okay.
depending on, I think it makes sense. I'm not exactly sure it makes sense, but like I'm pretty sure it makes
We
sense.
can see. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. I
Uh,
ended up getting the French press made
oh, you did get your little coffee, huh?
because it's like this is what I like to do now. I'm at that age. It was funny because when we talked and we were in Chicago, or we might have even been in New York, and you told me, look, what I would like to do, I don't want to go home with a woman. I want to ask her if she wants to get coffee in the morning. Oh, that's better. Why don't you want to do the light?
Bang, right?
Yeah.
Bang. Is it too like or no?
I don't think so.
All
I
right,
mean, either works. There you go. You got the globe because you're Mr. Worldwide.
so worldwide, you get me. Oh, you seen that? You feet? Astute. All right, you talking about women and what?
So yeah, no. Do you remember? So we were in New York. We were going to like different bars. We were clubbing and stuff. I mean, it wasn't like really clubbing. It was more like different bars, music like dance bars and stuff like that. And I was like, you're single. Like, why aren't you mingling a ton? And like, why are you not plotting on maybe going home with a woman? Like, I was just curious. And you're like, I would much rather go and have coffee tomorrow morning with one of these women. Like that's what I would rather do. And to me, I was astounded by that just because I'd never really had that mindset, especially then. I mean, and I had a girlfriend at the times too. And now I'm so far removed from that. But I am definitely a guy now that my preferred method of hanging out with people seems to be going and grabbing a cup of coffee in the morning. That's like stellar.
I am with you on that. That's funny that how I said I would say yes, it is true. Like I would have rather have gone to get a cup of coffee, but the also part true of it, the truth of it is also that I was probably scared as shit to even go up to anyone at that location wherever we were and go try to manangle my way into something.
Yeah.
So I think it's a little two-way. It's a little two-way street on that one, but it still holds true. I would say. It still holds true. And like I think just getting like coffee or meals with people on the weekends, I think is not my preferred way of hanging out with someone. Like I'd rather say, let's go get lunch this weekend than say let's go to a bar or let's go to a concert. To be fair, I do like.
You like concerts?
That's
Yeah.
my. I'm in the now. I'm like you now. Like, what time did you go to bed last night?
So it was a little bit worse than I wanted it to be, but I was in bed. I probably closed my eyes at 9:30.
9:30. I think that's exactly what you told me. You read for a half hour before?
So yeah, I got into bed at probably like 9:10. Probably read for like 20 minutes. The thing is, I was editing a video, YouTube video. So that's why I now have a little bit now of editing experience.
So
But
you,
yeah. But anyway, carry on. Carry on.
hold on,
We'll
so
get
you got in a head start on the YouTube journey without me?
I finished the first video.
Of
The
the
of the Levered ETF channel. It's
the
now
leverage.
and then I now have the Levered ETF tag for Twitter too, or
I
for
saw
X.
that. I saw
Yeah,
that.
I switched it. It was Levered ETFs. I switched it to Levered ETF. I mean, it probably doesn't matter one or the other. I was kind of surprised those handles were available.
True, to
I
be
was
honest.
like, oh, let me pick this up. But yeah,
Okay.
carry on, carry on. Like,
What were we discussing? Because I got distracted by the fact that you have started a YouTube channel. And
well, yeah, you
what did
said you kind of turned into me a little bit in the sense that, and then you asked what time I went to bed.
Oh yeah, in terms of sleep and stuff.
Ah, yeah,
Just in terms of like getting to bed early. Like I also I used to want to like I love a little dance. So I love a little late night dance, whether it's like
yeah,
techno a little like I love it, but like I can't until 6 in the morning. I can't anymore. Like I'd love to do a little 2 to 8 little action during the day.
yeah.
Get to bed, yeah, get to bed, whatever, at a good time by 10, 10:30, 11. I'd love to do that. So now I'm more into looking for that as a going out option, I think, to satisfy.
Maybe to be more popular. Yeah.
That's it's just better. Just better. I don't know what it is, but
Why can't we just have it earlier? Like, let's just do all happy hour time. Like,
happy.
you know what I mean? Like the other just on Friday, like I hadn't been out in since I've moved here, so over a month, and then before that, I can't even remember. It's been months since I've been out, at night for a long time, out until past midnight.
Mm,
And the guy asked me, someone I got put into touch with before I came out here with a former colleague. I think I told you that, but he was like, we are going to have dinner and then we're gonna go out probably around 10:15ish. I was like, and this was at 8.
you're
This
like
is probably at 8 p.m. I was like, dang, that is so, I mean, it's silly, I know, because I used to do that all the time, but like still nowadays that just seems absurd to that's what time you're planning on hitting the town. Like, well, let's go have a drink at 8, if we can, 4 to 5, maybe 6, and then call it at 9 and be in bed by 10. You know,
do you think that if you didn't already live like an Oderah party life back in the day, that you would still be so pro going to sleep early?
that's a great question. I so I always tell myself, or I always think like, dang, I wish I took college more seriously. I wish I was applying myself more. I wish I read more. I wish I took it more seriously. But to your point,
Hmm.
perhaps I wouldn't be the same person right now. I mean, I have this like belief that you can't regret anything in life. You don't want to regret anything because that leads to depression and sort of a dismal outlook on life. I think you can learn, right? And you could be like, yeah, that wasn't great, but now I know this X, Y, and Z because of that. But I have this belief that I don't have regrets in life, which I'm sure not everyone agrees with, but that's something that I think is a
This is great.
I lost my screens went black.
I can see
You can
you.
hear me?
I can hear you and see you, but not as like nicely lit. Your face is not as nicely lit as it.
Is that right? Okay, so I should keep these on. It's my monitors. I'll just they're I don't know, they're glitching out. But anyway,
Um,
yeah, so yeah, maybe I wouldn't be if I didn't have that crazy lifestyle. I mean, I was partying way too much. I'll just put it that way. I was partying way too much.
oof, regret. You just brought up regret. And I have been playing with regret a little bit in my mind, like just the idea of it, because isn't it just like, how could you possibly avoid regret when regret is an emotion that comes from the opportunity cost of a decision that you make? And because we're making decisions all the time, there's always going to be the opportunity cost. So I guess like let's say for example, you just made a big decision, you just left JP Morgan, you just left your big boy job for another big boy job, but and you moved to cities.
Maybe less big boy.
It's
Maybe less big boy.
sliding to the right. um like when you look back, you're never gonna be like, I wish I stayed. Are you?
I don't think I'll let myself think that way. I
No.
don't think I'll let myself think that way. But you bring up a good point because yeah, all decisions, there's an opportunity cost. And I think decisions throughout the day, little decisions, I regret all the time.
Yeah.
Little ones. And I should probably try to do better at not regretting those, but it's nature that you're going to be like, I will be on my phone for a little bit too long, doom scroll for a little bit too long, and be like, fuck, what did I just do for the past 20 minutes? Like, why was I doing that? And or the limit will come up on Instagram and I'll be like, fuck, I never want to hit that limit. Like, why did I get to that limit? And I'll regret it. But for sort of more important critical decisions in life, I do my absolute best not to regret those and just think, okay, look, that didn't end up working the way you thought it would. You know, now let's go from here and see how we can make the best outcome, with what we have now.
Okay. I do completely agree with you with the small little stuff. Like the small little stuff. Like
Do you think you have like big regrets in life?
no, I don't have any so far. But I'm thinking of like the 80-year-old person, right? The 80-year-old us looking back. Um, I saw someone recently said something that was like interesting, talking about like decision and big regrets in life. Is like, and I'm broadly paraphrasing. I'm not even sure if I understand the concept fully, but it was like at the end of the day, when we're 80 years old and we're looking back, we want to have made the decision that we would regret less not to take. So like it's like if you want to be if you're choosing between being a basketball player or like being a musician, it's like when I'm 80 years old, which one am I gonna be like, okay, like I'm okay with the sacrifice that I made to not be a musician, but I would not be able to live with myself if I'm 80 years old and I'm not like the basketball player or the best basketball player that I can be. Which was
Yeah.
interesting to me. I find it difficult to project myself that much in the future, to be honest. It's hard. It's hard. But I don't have any regrets at the moment. I don't have any. But I think that the university thing is definitely one that plays in my mind. It's like, what if you actually just, I don't know, maybe learned? That would have been cool. Something. Like something. Um,
And maybe we're too hard on ourselves. Maybe we did learn more than we think. I just know that there was an opportunity for me to learn vastly more than I did.
yeah.
When you think about hard decisions, because I think that's an incredible thought experiment, and I've thought this before in the past, but I don't really see myself consciously doing that, which is thinking about myself when I'm older and making my decisions based on like sort of backing into that. What will I regret less? Is that something I know you said it's kind of difficult for you to project out or, kind of imagine yourself that old thinking about these types of decisions, but do you try to do that ever?
It's new. It's new that I've been able, it's new. Like, and I don't do it very often, but I've recently, when I say new, I mean like the past few weeks, like literally knew that like I sometimes try to, but it's really hard. And like when you were talking about yesterday, you were talking about the thing about the nth power, right? Could you repeat the nth power thing so we can get back to because that one, the nth power is talking about time. And so if we're talking about nth power, like I think it would be important for us to also be able to project ourselves into the future, you know,
Yeah.
and look back perspective when you're talking about like consistent nth power. But can you explain the nth power?
Okay. So that formula, it's the Isak and I were talking about it yesterday. It's the sort of quintessential compounding interest formula. Y equals your initial investment multiplied by one plus the rate of return. And it's to the power of n, which is the number of years you're in that investment. And so basically, what we were saying is the most powerful variable in that formula is that nth power, is the number of years that you're doing something.
And so, okay. So, and then we were talking about like habits and building habits and being consistent
Yeah.
and how you can do something for 2 months. It's like, yeah, it might be helpful. But if you stretch it out to 20 years, then it's really, really helpful. But to do that and to think like that, you also have to assume that you're going to live. You're going to be alive in 20, 40 years, which is difficult to do. It's so hard. It's so hard.
That sounds so bleak. That sounds so
But
morbid.
like,
Well,
is it
what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? Like,
like
because I know in economics, we've sort of we've come to this agreement in economics that people make decisions as if they're still going to be around tomorrow, right? No one acts as if they're not going to be around tomorrow, because what that would mean is we spend every single dollar that we have today and we do not think about health at all because we're going to die tomorrow if that was our mindset. So I guess, do you think it's because you're just talking about what you're kind of highlighting is it's hard to think about yourself that far out in the future, or is there something else that you're kind of highlighting?
I'm thinking like if I'm trying to build a habit of some sort, the timeline, like we kind of said, it's helpful that if I commit to something like, okay, I'm going to commit to this for the rest of my life, but it's just so hard to say that because someone might say, okay, well, you're assuming that I'll be around tomorrow. And if someone is like in a struggling situation, like it's very hard. Like when I've been like really down bad, like when I'm in the most down bad seasons of my life, like time is like constrained. It's like it's like a obscure ball that kind of shines, not doesn't shine, sorry, the opposite of shine. It kind of obscures everything around you that like you can't even like the mantra like this too shall pass. Now, when you're down bad, like it's like you're gonna be like that forever. So I think I don't know what I'm trying to say to be honest, but I think just the time thing to the nth power is amazing in theory. I just think thinking about ourselves into the future is a skill that needs practice. And
Yeah.
I think that's something that it is helpful. It is like I think if you ask me like at a different part of my life, maybe a couple years ago, I would have been like, why are you worrying about the future? Like, why are you thinking about? Like I'd be like, who, like
Live
you
in the present.
know, like don't even. don't even try to guess. But now it's like, I guess the more you kind of understand what you want, which I think kind of plays into this more, the more you can start projecting that future self. But to understand what you want, I think that's whole different.
Yeah, that's interesting because when I brought up this formula, I was solely talking about investment returns. And you sort of drew this parallel, at least how I remember it. You sort of drew this parallel between, that formula and life more broadly, which I think is absolutely on point. But that's not really how I think I have the same difficulty as you when it comes to life more broadly, to think about, okay, if I do this and I do this every day, this can be powerful. This can be, magnificent. But it's easy for me to understand that on the investment side.
Mm.
But for some reason, it's hard for me to understand that just in life more broadly. Although I know I do things like I have good habits, like I try to, have good habits. But yeah, it is hard to project out. I mean, I think with the investment side, you can see the returns, and that's what we talked about, right? When I'd said, how have you changed that N from 20 years to 30 years or even 25 years, that total number y equals such a larger number than it would if you were only at 20 years. And so that's like, wow, you can just, it really illustrates how powerful it is. And when you think about just health and good habits and stuff like that, it's hard to, even understand what it's going to look like. Even like reading, I try to read now every night for a little bit, and I know it can be powerful. Like in my head, I'm like, I can really improve my reading comprehension, my just knowledge of many different topics, but I can't put a number behind it. Like I don't know what it's going to look like, but it probably does have this compounding effect as well that is just as powerful.
I think like that is that is the reason is that like when we're talking about the financial stuff, you can see it. You can see the number, be like, oh yeah, that worked. We're talking about us. We're just like experimenting, just hoping. We're really just hoping for the best at the end of the day. We're hoping for the best. We're hoping that maybe if we read every day, we can improve. Um, Maybe if we do this every day, if we run every day, if we whatever, that maybe we can improve. But we don't know for sure. Like we don't know for sure. Okay, maybe the science is coming out now that's like, oh, okay, now we know if you do this, and it can improve this. But like our minds are not wired that way to jump to that conclusion. We're just sitting there like reading sometimes. We're like, why the fuck am I reading right now? Like
I
this.
know. Well, what's interesting is like, I think metrics would help if we had some type of metric to see the progression. I think what's so cool about books, and you mentioned the bookshelf behind me,
Uh-huh.
is you can see all of the books that you've read, right? You have the tangible books. And so sometimes, I'll just, because I was not a reader, I was never a reader growing up. And my mom, I I vividly remember my mom just being like, "Yep, you're not a reader, like your brother and sister, and stuff like that." And some people would say you shouldn't sort of categorize or bucket your kids, right? You shouldn't say, "Oh, you're just not a math person," right? Because then they internalize that. Perhaps I did some of that. Love my mom. Nothing, no critiques on that. But yeah, and then now like I've been able to I've been reading, just started the book club, and I wanted to. For some reason, I always thought reading was beneficial in some capacity. So I'm now in a book club, and now I've been reading. And now I can see these books, and it's like, wow, I was not a reader. I never considered myself as a reader, and now I'm like, wow, I read 10 books last year or something like that. And you're like, okay, this is,
Wow.
but yeah, no, it's awesome. Now, will that be able to sustain me reading going forward? Probably, just because now I look at reading completely different than I did before. Like I think I talked to you, I might have mentioned this to you. I would try when I was reading back in the day, I would try to basically remember every single word sentence on a page.
Really?
Like I would think that I'm not comprehending it well enough if I can't regurgitate everything like to the T.
Wow.
And yeah, and so it was just a completely wrong mindset. And I just never, no one ever told me that, but that's what I thought reading was. Like, if you read it, you should know it. I took it so literally. Yeah, I know. And it wasn't until probably like a couple years ago or last year, where I realized it was really last year. And it's embarrassing to say that it was so recent, so recent that like I was talking to my friend on the phone, and he was like, we're reading this book, and I'm just not. I know sometimes I have to reread pages, and I'm like, sometimes I reread pages, but now my philosophy is like, if it didn't stick, then I probably don't think it's that important, because you know what happened. The aha moment was I would read a page, and then I would think, what did that say? Let me read that. Let me reread that. I would reread that page and be like, that's why I didn't fucking remember it. Because it was completely useless. And my mind's not going to store useless information. That's just how humans work for the most part, right? We remember some useless things. But and I noticed that over and over. And it was when I was reading nonfiction stuff, and I was just like, there's a reason why I'm not remembering this stuff. Like, of course, reading comprehension, you always want to improve it. Like, if you can, in theory, you want to improve it. But yeah, no. So back to what I'm saying, like metrics with reading. If you have books, you can see like where you've come, like how far you've come, how many books you've read, and it's sort of a like some type of motivation, right? It's a way to motivate yourself. And so I wonder like what other metrics we could have for other things in life. I think those metrics can help us stay motivated, sort of like how that formula helps us stay motivated when investing long term.
The cool part about what you just said is like I think now you are also so into reading because like you said like because you weren't a reader. So it's the power of going from not being a reader to a reader that I think is like what is also partly driving you forward is that you've been able to make that change. And I think so it's funny, so it's like, okay, our parents might have done that and been like and put us in these different buckets. But I think a lot of the times we will either like if your mom also said, Oderah, you're also a great public speaker. Like you might hold on to that and like go to become and be a great public speaker, but then she
Yeah.
said you're also not a reader, and that might get something in you that might get you going, and then you also become a reader. So it ends up being like two positives there instead of being like a positive and a negative, which is cool. And I have like same thing for me like a couple examples like with running. Okay, recently running. Like I've always seen myself to be the laziest piece of shit ever when it comes to running or doing any physical activity. Yes, I played soccer all my life, but I was always the laziest kid on the team, and I never want.
For all the people listening, this guy is jacked, by the way. So he says that despite being jacked.
No, really, the laziest guy the laziest guy. Like always last, when you're doing drills, you're running drills, you're doing things, always last, always last, always last. And I never really was like I always was just like a little bit too like I kind of thought I was better than everyone in a lot of ways in that sense. I don't know. Just kind of want to be cool guy when it comes to like the soccer field. Um at some point during the past 6 months, that shit started to piss me the fuck off. Like I don't even know. I can't even tell you an event of what happened, but it started to piss me off. It's like there's no way you're going to live all of your life with the mindset that like you're lazy. Like there's no way that you're lazy. Like there's absolutely no way. There's no way. So I don't know. Now it's like I'm a runner. You could say I'm addicted to running, whatever you kind of want to call it. But I think I it gives me so much power, and it's got nothing to do with actual running. It's got the fact of like, okay, you've turned that into that, and then you keep on doing that whatever, every day, every other day, whatever it is. That like that is the power. That's where the power lies. Or the same thing with like speaking, with public speaking. So like I had a my stutter was like really, 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 really bad growing up, and I still have it today. But like it it gasses me up sometimes that I'm able to speak the way that I speak. And a lot of I am very aware of the way that I speak because I've just always been so aware of it, like for the rest, just like going back in my life. Um, but I think that's also where the power lies. That's why like that's why we're doing this. Or for me, maybe on a personal level, like I want to be able to speak. I want to be able to articulate. Like there's power in that that I think I can find. And I also like obviously you're still so hard on yourself. And so when I'm running, like I'm still thinking that I've got the lazy piece of shit voice kind of in my mind. When I'm speaking, I still got to like, oh, don't stutter now. Like, but like, you just kind of like, I think the more you keep doing it, I think the more kind of the low self-esteem voice of those insecurities just kind of like dims down a little bit more.
Yeah, and that's now what I'm curious about. Like, how do you think about tracking your progress with communication and speaking and articulating?
In specific to the communication speaking,
Yeah, and specific to that now.
I think it would have to do something with like the internal dialogue as you're actually speaking or listening. Like, when you're in a conversation, you're like, oh, I don't know what to say next, or like you zone out because you're thinking about what to say, or I think all these are like a little tells of like maybe not as much of a confident communicator or listener, or just it's kind of social, a little bit of social anxiety in general. But I think when you kind of get in a little bit of that more comfort zone and comfort state, and then when you actually, this is the answer to the question that you just asked. When you zone out, how quickly do you zone back in? And I think that is probably the thing that maybe can be measured, not exactly, right? Not gonna have like a stopwatch, like
Your average time of zoning back in.
but I think that can be improved. And maybe you don't see that in a year, maybe you don't see that in 2 years, maybe you don't see that in 5 years, but like at some point I think that would be the tell that's like, oh, okay, you're improving in your comfortableness as you speak because you're able to come back to the present moment more and more often, I guess. But also just expressing ideas, which I don't know. How do you feel about you as a public speaker, and why are you doing this, OD? Why are you recording this conversation? Why did you agree to record this conversation? Why?
Why did I agree? So, well, you also asked, how do I feel about myself as a public
Yeah,
speaker?
yeah. Also that.
Well, as a public speaker, I think I'm okay, but I do think I have a lot of room for improvement. I've thought about speaking, improving my communication skills pretty deeply, not very recently, but within the past, call it year and a half. And one of like the most, I don't know, the greatest sort of phenomenon I thought when it comes to speaking is confidence, like you said. And sort of just it's almost an internal thing. Like if you are confident, then your communication levels probably go through the roof. And if you are questioning yourself, like someone who's has better vocabulary, who is probably has knows more about the world and knows more about different topics, can be a worse speaker than someone who has a very small vocabulary, who doesn't know a bunch about a lot of different topics just because of the confidence levels. And how to improve confidence, that's a whole nother question. I've listened to some, actually I've seen some research on how to improve confidence levels, trying to increase um, or increase or decrease cortisol. It has something to do with cortisol levels. Um, and there's some things that you can do, power poses,
Hmm.
self-affirmation things too. But I know the power poses were shown to improve confidence based on cortisol levels. And there were a couple other things, but I guess why do I want to do this? I don't see a downside to it.
There's no
I
doubt.
don't see a downside. I only see upside. So when I think about it just from that perspective, it's like, how could I not? And I guess I'll go into the upside. Very at the very least, me and my good buddy can catch up every other week, right? We have a carved out time to catch up with each other, which I think is fantastic. And I think it's something that we needed to have, right? So just having that time carved out. I know we probably would have, we have been keeping up, keeping tabs on each other, but this is good to have, right? Two, communication. I think that could be good. I think just from this conversation so far, I was like, well, I know a clear metric to see if my communication is improved. Watch the first video of this versus the video that we do in 2 years
Oh,
and
true.
see how the communication like improves. Like that's a great documentation. Like if not anything else, this is also a great way to see how we can improve our communication, have like a record of it, right? And I think that's always helpful. Again, that's kind of like back to the metric thing, and being able to see the progress, I think can make all the difference. And so yeah, I think those are both really like the main reasons. The really the first one was the biggest reason why I started it. The other one was just thought about now. And then the last, like, if for some reason this can turn into something, that would be awesome too. That's just another upside thing. But honestly, that's not really, that in and of itself wouldn't make me do this. I don't think. I needed to have the first reason, which is just to be able to have carved out time with you because I love you. No.
Okay, topic real quick. Um, why is communication important to you?
Communication is super important to me. And it's because I think that is our only way at, not our only way, but that is a very powerful way at expressing the thoughts that we have with the rest of the world. And I think the thoughts that we have can be very powerful and can do amazing things. And so we need to have communication skills to be able to transmit those thoughts to other people. Um, and I think that communication is so key because there are so many conflicts that happen. I believe there are so many conflicts that happen throughout the world because there's this disconnect with communication. And I've noticed it even with me and my relationships personally, right? Like I say something because I'm upset at something else, and the person I'm talking to takes it completely differently than sort of the true impetus behind it, right? I'm communicating in a way that's not entirely accurate because I have this other thing that is making me think this way. And because of that lack of communication, right, it can completely sort of disrupt the relationship or disrupt a scenario, a conversation, whatever it may be. And so that's why I think it's so important. With eye on the time, do you see that time too? You see that time too?
I was about to send you a chat like, deal.
I guess we'll cut it here, and we'll go from there. Oh, so I might
Oh,
be the one bugging this
oh,
this time. All right, we took a little break,
we did
but
take.
we are back.
We got some refreshment.
Um,
No, we didn't. I didn't get
got
it.
some refreshments. We filled the coffee now. But I think you had just asked me about communication, why
Yeah.
I think it's important,
Mm.
and I guess we'll finish off on the communication topic with you and why you think it's important.
Okay. Communicate. shun. Communication. It is
Communication.
communication. It is important, isn't it? I think I a lot of the times devalue the importance of communication because I also think it's very important as part of the communication in the communication world. Let's call it world. Not communicating and shutting up is also important a lot of the times. So I think I value shutting up a lot. I think that's just a personal thing, just based on like shy personality growing up. But now I want to, it's like a little inverse chart. Now I'm diving deeper into the communication world. And at the end of the day, it is communication probably that gets you what you want a lot of the times. And I'm saying that when we're talking about if we remove ourselves from the kind of personal growth story, when it's just in situations where it's not you versus you, and you're in a social environment, you're at work, you are with your friends, whatever it might be, relationships. Yeah, it is so important. And I think it's not necessarily like your tone or like the speed sometimes. It is all that is very important from a like public speaker perspective and to just like seem more interesting and to actually get other people's brains to be like, yo, this person is talking, like I better listen to what he's saying. Completely lost my train of thought there. So
Well,
communication.
you're just saying, you're just saying like how it is important. I've thought of that too with when it comes to like
Hold on, hold on. Let him cook.
You just sing it a little bit, it'll come back. Sing it.
I'm gonna take a laugh.
That's hilarious. No, but I thought about it too, and I was gonna make fun of you because you said it to
What?
help get you what you want. But
Yeah.
like,
What do you think about that?
it's true.
Yeah, it's true.
It's really true, and it doesn't need to be something used in a nefarious way,
No,
right? But it
not
can
manipulation. No,
no, and it doesn't need to be manipulative.
certainly
But
can.
you are just able to communicate into or you're able to communicate what you want and you're able to do it in an effective way that people can understand it. So, of course, if someone can communicate what they want, they're going to have a better chance of getting what they want as opposed to someone who doesn't really know how to communicate exactly what they want. Right. And I will say this sometimes I beat myself up over not knowing how to communicate certain thoughts. I listened to Naval speak on Chris Williamson's podcast, and he mentioned that there are thoughts that are unable to be communicated and articulated through language. And I do think that's also true. And then last thing I'll say on this is that you have a profound way at communicating that I think a lot of other people don't, including myself. And I'll just say one anecdote to sort of support this. I remember the exact moment that I met you. You
Mm.
might not remember it, but I remember it. And it's because we were in New York. For those of you who don't know, Isak and I met at JP Morgan's analyst training out in New York. And I had seen you because there's not a ton of other mixed kids, not a ton of other black kids or analysts at JP Morgan in our class. And there are especially not a lot of other mixed kids,
Mm.
or analysts in that class. There weren't. And so I saw you and I was like, oh, who's that? Interesting. Seems like he's suited up, handsome man. And I wasn't going to probably approach you unless we were like, it was supernatural and organic and you were right there or something like that. But I did notice you. And then I saw you when we were at the happy hour and after the first day. And I was like, oh, there he is again. And it's kind of like now you're kind of close, and I'm meeting everyone, and then I turn to you, and I'm like, I'm not sure how you're going to be, right? You never know how someone's going to be, and you just put on this big smile, big before even we haven't even met, big smile. Nice to meet you. Yeah, big smile, bigger smile than I had seen from a lot of other people who are, very genuine smile. So it's there are a lot of things in communication that it's not just about language, right? And I think that you have an innate ability to sort of connect through these nonverbal communication methods.
That's love. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well,
Um,
we'll wrap like that on communication. But unless you have anything else to
well,
add on that.
I was gonna do a reverse gas up, but then we're gonna get into like a little lovable
No,
thing.
no,
I don't
no,
know if
no, no, no.
anyone
That's
can
not what this is
say that.
for. It's not what this is
Know what this
for.
is
But I
for.
did remember that. I think that's pretty powerful that I remember. There's not a lot of people that I remember the exact first time that we interacted.
Mm,
But for you, it's a little bit different. We were older, right? Wasn't very, very long ago,
true.
but it did stick out to me. And so I think, and it was because of a communication method that I think oftentimes gets overlooked, which is those nonverbal communication methods or those nonverbal communication cues, I should say. So I did have a question for you, though. I have actually a number of questions for you, and I don't even know where to start. But I guess we'll start on we'll move it to markets. We'll move into markets because we
Oh,
haven't
move to
talked about
market.
markets and I haven't, and I know you know a lot about markets. I know you've been thinking a lot about markets recently. So I kind of just want you to give us your thoughts on where we are today. At the time of this video, we have Trump tariffs that are really disrupting market moves, and investors are not sure on how these are going to impact earnings and the economy more broadly. You have people like Larry Summers on one side who think that this can have very negative impacts to the economy and think that it could have been done in a much more seamless way. We have investors who think that this is critical, or we have people who think that this is critical for the economy and U.S. prosperity. And then we have people who are markets focused, who are not really as concerned about necessarily, economic policy, different governments and what they're doing, but they're just focused on market activity. And that is Isak. What are you seeing in the markets? What do you think? What do you expect? What do you take away from what you've been seeing? I mean, this volatility is out of this world. You've been looking into it deeply and ruminating over this deeply. So would love to hear your thoughts. And I'm sure everyone else would too.
Thank you for the gas up. Thank you for the gas up. It's funny, like I've been talking about this a decent amount the last couple of days because I'm currently in Umbria. I'm obviously gonna like evade the question and just completely dance around it, but I'm sure eventually I'll get back to it. I'm in Umbria right now, in Italy, um, with a lot of like my mom's friend. I'm running into a lot of my mom's friends essentially, and whatever they know that I'm into the markets, and everyone is scared. Obviously, also from Europe, they're seeing news from the U.S. Now it's affecting the whole world, but everyone's kind of involved now. But like they come to me and they're asking me questions. I'm like, I really don't know shit about it, but I can give you my opinion from a technical perspective, the boring perspective, the overlooked perspective, which is why I think it's the cool perspective. Um, and the gist of it is that there's a lot of fear out there. There's a lot of fear, and rightfully so, because there is a lot of uncertainty. And there's one thing that the market hates the most is uncertainty. And Mr. Donald has come in and just dropped a bucket of uncertainty on top of the whole market. And so everybody's freaking out, and rightfully so. I think the first question that we can ask is like we have to like, and this is the most difficult part, is like removing your actual thoughts and feelings, which you're not going to do totally, but when it comes to like, how is this going to impact me personally? Or I'm worried about this person that lives in this country. Like, how are these people going to, if we're talking about just markets and investment world, like we have to kind of sort of like, and put that a little bit to the side. Um,
Mm.
I think a lot of macro people, like the macro world is about the why. Like, why is this happening? What does this mean going forward? The technical world is more of like, okay, what's happened historically? What is happening now? And if we go back historically, we've had, and this is not like a crazy drawdown, right? We're what? We're now in bear market territory, but we've bounced up. So like we're down something like 17%, I think. I think we were down, the S&P was down something along the lines of 21, 22%. NASDAQ a little bit more as more tech stocks get hit. This has happened in the past. Like this has happened a lot of the times in the past. 2022, most recently bear market. COVID is the one that I think in the recent times more similarly, it looks the same from a kind of like flash crash, high fear-based environment. I think COVID was more of a health crisis. So, similar, but from a wide perspective, this is like we're dealing with like an economic financial crisis, if you will. So I think everyone's like, okay, let's go back to the last financial crisis, which is 2008, which obviously we know how devastating that was. But let's just chat about the charts real quick. We were deeply oversold. I mean, deeply oversold the other day when we had the second largest percentage update in the Nasdaq history, right? What was that? I think this past week, Wednesday, maybe Tuesday, maybe Thursday. Insane. Insane volatility. Nasdaq closed up like 12%. I mean, it was trading like a penny stock. And this is we're talking about an index, a national like the Nasdaq, like the index. Incredible, incredible stuff. And so then we got a couple of days past that. I think that was Wednesday because Thursday, Friday, we got a couple of days of volatility contracting. I think we're due for a bounce here. I think if you're a long-term investor, like let's divide it into the frames of like what type of like investor you might be. If you're a long-term investor, look, I'm not saying go all in, like right here. I actually don't. I think the market actually ends up going lower. I think market doesn't care about my opinion, but that's what I think. Um, but like start putting some chips. It makes sense. It would make sense to start putting some chips in on the table and start buying at these levels because when you look back historically at what's happened when the market has been um, in these levels of drawdowns, we've seen a bounce and we've seen the market recover every single time. The thing that's I think is a little bit scary for people is like in 2008, the market took 5.5 years to get back to its highs. So that's scary, right? Because like if you are retiring, if you're 65, 66, in that age range, you're scared and I understand because you can't afford a big drawdown like 2008 where the market takes 5 years to recover. You want ideally your funds when you're retired to be at the highs, right? In a perfect world. So that's why I think risk management and technicals I think are a bit overlooked in the 401k community, in the buy and hold kind of mutual funds community, because we're saying buy and hold, and that works for most of the crowd. But then when we get to when we're actually about to retire, those people are like they're hands off and the market is taking the wheel and they have no control. They have absolutely no control of anything and they're just kind of hoping for the best. Anyways, due for a bounce, I think. I think we rallied quite a bit. We're under some major moving averages, which are just trend indicators. That just mean the market is in a downtrend. We know the market moves on trends. We can talk a little bit about trends because I do like trends a lot, just in general, life trends, whatever. let's not even go there. Let's not even go there. But I think we have a lot of work to do, and no one knows if this market, if we have a bottom, if we're going to bottom the next 2 weeks, the next 2 years. The only thing we can do is stick to our plan, stick to our process, whatever kind of investment philosophy that you came in with. You know, I want to say that like we should stick to that because if we come in with an investment philosophy and like during moments of fear we change our whole investment process, we're going to keep on doing that and doing that and doing that, and we're never going to get a kind of consistency of data over time um that can actually show us what works and what works for you, right? And works for me because, as you know, Oderah, we have much different investment philosophies. So, from my perspective, I'm a momentum swing and position trader. So I do not like volatility. I don't trade volatility. I actually trade volatility contraction. So for me, this is a hands-off cash market. And when momentum gets back into the market, we will know because we will see volatility contraction. We will see new leaders actually making new highs. There are no stocks making new highs right now, which new highs just mean price reaching a 52-week high in the past year, or just general new highs, which means the overall market is weak. But a big breadth indicator, which I looked at recently, got really oversold, which is the percentage of Nasdaq and I think the S&P. I think both are extremely oversold. Below, sorry, let me start again. It's the percentage of Nasdaq stocks above the 200-day moving average. The 200-day moving average is a very long-term moving average. So think of it as like a long-term indicator of investors. Like investors use 200-day moving average, traders not as much. And that is deeply oversold, which just means that like they, from a risk reward perspective, buyers are interested here. All the sellers that were present, they are likely to be in sold off territory. Like there's no more sellers to sell. They've done most of the selling. And we saw in COVID, this indicator was oversold for a good 3 to 6 months. So it can stay that way for a while. What is oversold can get much more oversold. Um, but from a risk reward perspective, I don't think this is the time to start to short stocks. I think that that time has already passed. But as we know, could be wrong as soon as Monday market opens. So we'll see. We'll have to adjust and move on the fly. But that's kind of the yappa on that. But curious from a long-term perspective level, if you are fearful right now, if you are buying, how do you see yourself reacting from an emotional level? Also, I don't know, are you a person who likes to check their accounts and check their investments that are down right now? Are you hands off on that? Are you not worried? How do you how do you maneuver a time like this as a long-term investor?
Yeah, really quickly
Yeah,
on your positioning, you are fully cash right now.
100% cash. Absolutely.
So, at what point did you decide to go fully cash? And is there ever a time where you're holding a an investment for longer than one trading day? And if so, what would the reason be?
Um, so I've been fully cash since really the end of February, beginning of March. So I have skipped, call it, I guess, the drawdown. And I've dibble dabbled in a few pilot positions. Sometimes I'll take like a few pilot position, like 1 to 2% size, to see if the market might be ready or not. But those have been cut pretty quickly because the market quickly moved against me. So been in cash for the most part for a while. You asked how, when do I hold a position for longer than a day? I'll hold the position for longer than a day if it's a winning position. So if I don't have, because I am a momentum trader, right? If I buy something, I expect there to be momentum at the time that I buy, and therefore I expect my stock to be higher than the price at which I bought it at that day. On like that day. So that is kind of a key indicator. It's like, oh, okay, we have profit same day. This is a trade that could work. Could, of course, is the key word there. But and what that does from a psychological perspective too is like you're now holding risk overnight, but you're okay because you have a little bit of cushion on that risk, right? Because you're already in the green. If you put on a position and you're down 2% already in the position, from a psychological mental capital perspective, you start to be like, okay, I hope the market gaps up tomorrow. So I'm back to being flat on this trade. And once you start to get in the hope mindset, you're cooked. You're cooked because
Yeah.
that would drain you outside of market hours. If you're drained outside of market hours, you're not going to sleep well. If you don't sleep well, you're not going to be ready to go the next day. So it's kind of
You
goes
see that aura? You see that aura on your finger?
Oura though. Oh, is that
Gotta sleep good. Yeah, okay, that's interesting. Well, hey, we gotta give you your flowers for missing this massive drawdown. I mean, you gotta give yourself a pat on the back for that because it's
I
been.
yeah, yes, I think the system that I trade with, and I think general momentum style trade system, they do get you out for these sort of situations. I think getting back in then is a different ball game. So let's come back in a little bit of time, and then maybe you can give me my kudos if I hit the next turn, whenever that is. So for now, we'll just say yes, I've avoided it, but I think that's kind of like the easy part from my perspective. And now let's see how quickly we can get back on board when eventually the trend turns again. And the great thing about this is like these create massive opportunities. Like these sort of markets create massive opportunities. Like the most elite traders and investors are grinning ear to ear right now because they know, and they don't care. They're gonna wait a month, 2 months, a year, 2 years. They know that when the momentum gets back into the market, and momentum is like it's an indicator for me of like institutions accumulating stocks in the market. When institutions buy stocks, they can't buy them all at once, right? They're trading billions of dollars. So they have to gradually get into the stocks. And that is what creates these actual trends. And we can go on a whole tangent here that I'm sure we'll get to eventually. But that is what actually creates these trends and how it creates momentum and how traders like me, the small time traders can actually take advantage. But it's institutions that make the things happen, and you're just like the little baby trader that kind of just rides on the wave on the coattail. But we will know when that happens because price will confirm, moving averages will flip, start being positive. Price will be above the moving averages. There's no time. Like a lot of traders and investors are very concerned with like catching like the bottom. I'm not too concerned about that, and I won't get the best price. It's okay. Like I'll want a stock, and like I missed a turn, I'll buy back 20% higher. I'll buy back 30% higher. Don't really care. Just really try to focus on what happens from when I buy a stock and sell. And when you're trading momentum, or investing in momentum, I mean, these stocks in bull markets, especially at the beginning of a bull market, which we will now be in one eventually, in 1 month, 2 months, 2 years, 3 years, we don't know when. But when we get that new beginning of a bull market, that is when momentum really starts to rip, and you can get like 100 to 200% returns for individual stocks and even for your overall account, if you're ready for it. So that's the goal. So now I'm in studying mode these days. They're trying to get back to try to study past bear markets, trying to
Yeah.
study past winning leaders, winning stocks of the past years, and just continuing to study the characteristics, continuing to refine that process. That's the goal as I'm just hanging out in cash right now.
Student of history.
Student of history. Yeah, a student of history. Yes.
Yeah,
Um,
that's interesting. Yeah, I think it's super interesting to hear about the different mentality that you have, which is so focused on technicals. And I do think that although you're looking at technicals, or let's say for example, you have someone looking at technicals, and you have someone looking at more fundamentals. I do think that you could be looking at two different things, but they can be telling you very similar, outcomes. Like they can be essentially saying the same thing, but just showing you in two different ways. And so I think that sometimes, although it seems as if it's a completely separate way of investing, which it is, there's probably more parallels between the fundamentals or the long term view and the technical view than a lot of people think, which
and
is interesting. And I just kind of thought about that right now. I haven't really put that together in the past.
yeah, and to add to that, like if you are a guy who focuses on fundamental analysis and fundamental analysis is your thing, like, and it works for you, like more power to you. I personally think like fundamental analysis is so hard. It's so hard. There's so many moving factors, like being on top of the whole economic landscape. Like if that works for you, like more power to you, really. And you can always, yeah, and I think it's very cool when investors combine their fundamental analysis,
Mm-hmm.
if even some technical sometimes. I think that's great as well too. It all ends up being like a personality thing. Like for me personally, we were talking about something interesting yesterday, which I don't actually remember fully what it was, but why do we view the markets in such a completely different way? I think, oh, we're talking about, okay, here's what it is. We're talking about long-term perspectives. It's like, oh, you're a long-term guy. Like you sometimes think of yourself, you're pitching yourself when you're 80 years old, but like you're then not a buy and hold kind of investor sort of situation. Like you're not projecting that, you're not thinking about that when you're 80 years old. Like why are you short-term trading if if you're doing that? Which makes complete sense. And I think my answer to that, as I was reflecting on that, it's like I love the control. Like I love to be able to control, or at least try to, or at least be able to be, yeah, to control a little bit. Not control the markets, but control my decision making system when it comes into the markets on a more frequent basis. I think I don't know if that makes sense. Well, I think
No, it does.
it's not
I
like
understand the premise because what I'll say is I have fears that are almost impertinent to you because of the way you trade. So when you asked me before how I view the markets right now from a long term perspective, and you like to joke and call me a macro guy. I mean, I'm not sort of a macro expert by any means, but yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I'd say my biggest fears are two things. One, that the fundamental sort of lead that the US market has over the rest of the country or over the rest of the world changes, right? And so that's terrifying for a long term investor if that's the case. If fundamentally the dynamics shift in a way that leaves US behind, as a US long term investor, you are absolutely terrified because if you look back and see how US has left other countries, if that switches, then you could be missing out on massive returns if you're only invested in the US, right? And so we've talked about this a little bit, but that's why you have guys like Scott Galloway, you have people like Eugene Fama. He's a PhD out of like a very renowned PhD in finance and one of the most renowned sort of finance professors and professionals in academia. at Booth at Chicago School of Business, you hear them say the importance, and a lot of it, and it's interesting, a lot of sort of older finance professors who are sort of renowned in the academic world preach diversification globally,
Mm.
internationally, away from the US. And they think that that's something that's so often overlooked, especially because of the run that US has had. So I think for a long-term investor, we are terrified that the dynamic changes in US doesn't stay and US markets don't stay the leader because all of our capital is invested in the US. Now, the fear really isn't that markets continue to go or that we're going to lose a lot of money, but it's more opportunity cost. It's like, dang, maybe I should have been more diversified globally, and I should have sort of zoomed out and thought, no country rules forever, no country leads forever. So why was I so bullish on U.S. markets? That's one thing. I'd say that's the primary fear for me, and I think that's going to be a fear so long as I invest. And one of the remedies to this is now, and I've tweeted this, is holding more cash, and it's holding more cash, or like my options are holding more cash or investing globally, and that's how much I don't believe, and that's how much I'm bearish on the global economy outside of the US, that I rather just hold cash. Because thinking about the perspective we talked about earlier, which is thinking about yourself in the future and then reflecting back on what would you regret. Well, what I certainly would regret is if I invest globally and those markets tank or those markets do worse than cash, which frankly they would likely not do worse than cash, especially if I'm thinking long term. But I don't think I would regret being in cash over if I look back and globally markets outperform and cash does. I don't think I would be. I mean, either way, like I said, my philosophy is not to regret, so I think I'd be okay. But that is a fear, and then the other fear, of course, is just how long will this bear market be? How damaging to markets will it be, especially as someone in levered ETFs? Right? I've already seen I'm 50%. I'm 50% in the red already, and part of me is worried, but there's a part of me that's kind of actually a little relieved and happy about this because I'm getting tested already, and I knew it was going to be a very, very hard run for the next 25 years that I'm invested in levered ETFs, and I'll be posting a video a little bit more on this. It's going to be on YouTube later, and you guys can see it. It might already be on YouTube by the time this uploads. A levered ETF is the channel. Little plug there, but yeah, I mean that's terrifying because those ETFs are much more likely to go down to zero and dissolve than the broader markets, and so that's another thing that I think is concerning. But it's really about U.S. dominance going forward and what that looks like.
That is, first of all, that is power right there. That you're like, okay, I'm down 50% on this. Good. Like I get to experience this. I get to learn this right now. It's nice.
I mean, that can only be a mindset if you truly believe in your thesis,
That's
which
true.
I do. Which I do. I mean, some people would be like you asked me early. You said, "At what point are you getting out?" I said, "I'm not getting out." I said, I'm riding this thing to zero. I'm riding this thing to zero. It's gone. It's
And
either, yeah.
can you give some context in terms of your position sizing on that? Because I think if someone is hearing this, it's like, oh, that's all you have in your portfolio? Or how have you sized your overall allocation?
Yeah. So I am a relatively large investor for my portfolio in TQQQ, levered NASDAQ. And how I sort of got to that portfolio side or that positioning is what I was willing to lose, right? Because that's like I kind of alluded to earlier. I'm not going to sell this position unless my view fundamentally changes or something unforeseen happens. But again, that is not the plan. I plan on writing this out to zero. So I have put in what I feel comfortable going to zero, which is about, give or take, 10% of my entire portfolio, and that's including retirement accounts. That is everything. Um, we will, and my goal is that this grows to significantly more. But if this ends up being, which I hope, 99% of my portfolio, right? With the mindset I have,
Oh, hey.
I fully intend on this being, I shouldn't say 99, but 90, 85 plus, right? Because of the potential I think that this has of growing. And I'm not going to stop it from growing. I'm not going to limit the risk because, again, of course you have the opportunity cost, but the actual nominal cost is going to just be what I've put in. So if it ends up going to, if it, 1,000x's and goes to zero, then I like to think that I'm going to end up, after, once it sort of grows substantially, I'll have limits and stop losses and stuff on it. Then I'll start placing those probably every day, market open, if it gets sizable enough, once it gets to hopefully 50% of my portfolio. But until then, I'm letting it ride, and I'm not going to have any stop losses on it or anything like that. And I really hope that this does turn into, at one point, 90% of everything I have, because all that means is this appreciated exponentially. That's all I mean. It wouldn't mean that doesn't mean I'm putting more into it. That just means that's, with the current position I have, it grows that large to where it's 90% of everything I have, which, it's very contrary to popular belief or just consensus.
Do you think you're gonna be able? And we're running out of time here, so we might have to come back. But I do have
Oh shit!
I do, I do have a question for you, regarding, like. But then, if it's 50%, like, what about a 50% drawdown? Are you able? Is your risk tolerance, do you think, going to be able to withstand a 50% drawdown in what is 50% of your overall assets?
Yeah, I think that's when I'll start thinking about putting the stop
Oh,
losses once it gets
ah,
that big.
yeah.
Yeah, so that I won't. That's when I'll start being more active, and then I'll be
Mm,
more of an active trader like you.
nice.
But this has been incredible. Thank you all, Isak.
Uh,
You're wonderful, like always.
I'll see you in 2 weeks.
All right, brother.
Love.
Ciao.
Ciao.